Okay, so now we're ready to solder our through-hole components to the conductive fabric. I'm going to start with my resistor, and I'm going to leave the leads long, even though I probably will want to snip them later. It's helpful to have them so you can secure your resistor, right? Because I'm going to want to solder as close to the component body as possible. Probably I'm not going to want to solder over here. That's going to make sure that it stays in place. Now, I really like using artist tape for this purpose. Artist tape is better than masking tape or like painter's tape in its ability to adhere to fabric but not leave a bunch of gross residue behind. So I've got my artist tape securing my component, which is great. I've got my soldering iron heated up. I'm going to clean it by dunking it in my brass sort of jungle of threads. This thing. Yeah. This. You can also use a sponge with water. It came with your soldering kit. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to, there's no perfect science to this, okay? You may try different techniques for different types of circuits and different circuit designs and different materials. So what I'm going to do is put the tip of my soldering iron on my component, and then put my solder near it, and then I'm going to wait for my solder to pool on the fabric. Do you see that? That's a little bit more than I would like. Ideally, it would be a little bit neater than that, but that works for me. Do the same thing over here. And there we go. That's one component down. So I'll go ahead and move that out of the way. I can remove my pieces of tape, but not throw them away because I'll use them later on. And then I'm going to, actually, I should do my due diligence. I'm going to check for continuity. So I can see this piece is not soldered, it's above the solder line. Okay, so we're good there. We're good there. Perfect. And we are not fully connected there, which is what I want. Just to make sure nothing moved out of place. So now I can take my snips. And again, depending on your configuration, you may be able to pull this back. You may not be. You may want to pull the lead up. But I'm going to get as close to that solder as possible. Do the same thing over here. All right, and there we go. It's better to pull the fabric down because if you pull the leads up, you may get a little bit of a rough edge of that metal, which is not great. So now we'll go ahead and do the same thing with our LED. This one's a little bit different, this component, because it has orientation to it. You need to make sure that you're putting it in the right direction, whereas a resistor, it doesn't matter. So I know that this is the ground side of my LED because there's a flat surface here. And I know that this is going to be ground, so I want to turn this around and then place it so my component, the package of the LED, is over that hole. And then maybe I'll just snip this a little bit so it fits on there. Okay, and then I'm going to use a piece of tape to secure my LED. All right, and we're good to go. Now we can start soldering. We'll do the same thing that we did before. Right, it's there. And again there, wait for it to pool. It's going to heat up. And I'm also pressing down a little bit on my soldering iron. So the conductive fabric will accept it. Okay? Oh, I did something I shouldn't have, which is I soldered on a plastic table. So now it's a little stuck to the table, which I'm glad you were able to see. Things you shouldn't do. Now, something you might encounter here. So because that got stuck and I had to pull it up a little bit, you might be able to see my conductive fabric is actually coming up a little bit. Not great, but that's okay. We'll take care of that when we add our fabric glue to the components. So I'm going to do the same thing that I did before. I'm going to snip. And I'm going to snip. Alright, and now I will go ahead and test. So these are two pins that are two probes that are hooked up to a 3-volt battery. So when I apply this, it should light up, and it does. And now when I apply it here, it should light up, but a little bit dimmer. And it does. There we go. And the reason that this is, if we had alligator clips, this would probably be a little bit more stable. These probes are a little old. And that is how you solder through hole to fabric. You can go ahead, put a dab of fabric glue here, 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 and you place your other solder joint.